Hey, it's Dr. Charles, aka CoachMD. In my over 30 years of medical practice, I've made it my goal to help you create a great life by achieving a strong mind, a healthy body, and an unshakable spirit. Today, I'd like to go over a study, actually, some studies that were done a few months ago, talking about whether or not one shot of a vaccine may be enough for COVID-19 survivors, as studies suggest. And studies, that means plural. And these studies were from a few months ago, but they're now making their way into the mainstream media because we all believe so much in science, right? Yeah, the science. You heard that. I believe in science. That's what people say. Well, if you believe so much in science, let's take a look a little bit more closely at the science and whether or not one vaccine is good enough, whether you've survived COVID or you haven't survived COVID. Let's take a look at this. And this is a story out of the LA Times, which is reviewing other stories and appeared on other studies and appeared on Yahoo News. For people who have bared their arms for two COVID-19 vaccines, the message from public health officials has been clear: get the second shot if you want to be fully protected. But an emerging body of evidence suggests that there may be an exception to that rule. If you've already battled a coronavirus infection, it's possible that one dose may suffice. And my issue is with all of these edicts is that there's not a one-size-fits-all approach. We really need to look at the specifics. And I've talked about this before. There's a one-size-fits-all when we talk about exposure to COVID and who's more susceptible. Not all groups of people are likely to die. Most groups of people are not likely to die from this virus or get particularly sick from it. Only a select group, and we've gone over those: multiple medical problems, advanced age, certain other conditions. We've talked about those. So we've kind of adopted a one-size-fits-all instead of looking at the science, and this goes with the vaccines also. Everyone needs two vaccines. Well, that may not be the case, and I'm amazed by it, actually, and flabbergasted that people, why is this virus so different from other viruses, right? I mean, we're going to see in a second why they're recommending that people who've had infections get vaccines at all. This has been rumored for a long time that people with pre-existing disease only need a single pre-existing COVID disease, only need a single dose to get real long-lasting immunity, says George Rutherford, an infectious disease epidemiologist at the University of San Francisco. Both the Pfizer, BioNTech, and Moderna vaccines require two doses given a few weeks apart. The first dose essentially primes the immune system to recognize the attack, the virus's telltale spike protein, while the second one prompts the immune system to produce a flood of antibodies. So let me just go over a little bit of what's happening there. It's a primer. Okay, when you're getting the first vaccine, it's what's called the messenger RNA vaccine. We're talking about the Pfizer and the Moderna, the Johnson & Johnson, a little bit different. But the Pfizer and the Moderna are messenger RNA. Messenger RNA basically tells the cell to produce a protein, and that protein lines the coronavirus, and it primes the T cells. Okay, T cells, we all think about antibodies. Well, T cells are actually probably the more important type of immunity that we need to develop, and that's called a cellular immunity versus the humoral immunity, which are the antibodies. So we prime the cells. So even people who have negative antibodies may have already been primed, their T cells, which make them pretty much immune as well, whether you have the antibodies or not. So priming it, and this goes also to people's fears of whether or not you're going to get long-lasting effects if this vaccine lasts in you for a long time. The vaccine doesn't last in you more than probably a few days, maybe a week or two at the most. But what it does, it has signaled your cells to make the protein that lines the coronavirus, and that signal only lasts a week or so also. And that's enough time to prime your immune system. Then it's gone from your body. And now your immune system will remember, if it sees that again, if the coronavirus comes in you and sees it, it will attack it. It will overwhelm it. It will kill it, right? Before it takes hold, before it's contagious. So that's the most important thing, that initial shot to prime it. That's the most important thing. The other one is kind of a booster shot. And if someone already was primed, why do you really need another booster shot? It's basically overkill, in my opinion. So now the science now is saying it, but before that, and I know people who've had coronavirus who got very sick from that second, when they've recovered from coronavirus, they got an initial vaccine, did okay, but then they got their second one, and it didn't really, they didn't do too well with it. They didn't get real sick that they had to go in the hospital, but they were pretty miserable for several days. Getting the second dose is essentially in order to get the fullest possible protection against the virus, as experts say. Yeah, it's a booster shot. Probably will give you more immunity. And just let me go back. I did a video weeks back looking at the different vaccines, and I made the announcement that I was going to wait for the J&J vaccine. And I decided, actually, looking at all the information, that I decided to get the Pfizer vaccine, and I've gotten 2 doses of the Pfizer vaccine, didn't have any reaction except for feeling a mild fatigue as though I was coming down with the virus, which is good. You want that, because when we feel fatigued from a virus, that's actually our immune system responding. So that means that I got an immune response. And why did I choose the Pfizer? Well, I chose the Pfizer because I felt that the messenger RNA just stays in what's called a cytoplasm of the cell. It doesn't get into the nucleus, whereas the J&J gets into the nucleus. So then it comes back into the cytoplasm to make the protein. The messenger RNA stays in the cytoplasm, kind of like the coronavirus does. It's what's called the messenger RNA virus, okay, an RNA virus, and it will produce the proteins, release them, and let the body do its job. I decided to do that. Why that over the Moderna? Well, the Moderna puts about 10 times the amount of active ingredient that is in the Pfizer vaccine for about the same immunologic response. So it's not only my opinion, but the opinion of other experts, right, that people get a little bit more of a stronger reaction to the Moderna because it's actually a stronger virus, but you get more bang for the buck, in my opinion, from the Pfizer, and that's why I went with the Pfizer vaccine. So now researchers are increasingly finding that a SARS-CoV-2 infection may act a lot like the first shot of the vaccine. Of course, that's what our immune system does. We don't need a vaccine to mimic our immune system. If we got the virus, our immune system now has been primed. Okay, our T cells have been primed to recognize it again. And I'm going to read on further of what the NIH has to say about this, but it's mind-boggling. Why are we treating this like it's like a different virus? Yes, it's a different virus. It's a novel virus. Yes, all of that's true. It's a very serious virus, can cause serious illness. Yes, that's true, and maybe post-viral illnesses as well. All of that's true. But the basic immunology is the same as every other virus. So let's look at it that way. Our body's going to be primed if we've got it. So we will be immune to it. A study by scientists in Seattle and Montreal examined blood serum samples from people who had recovered from COVID-19 and from others who had not. Okay, so they collected those before and after immunization with either the Pfizer or the Moderna vaccine. And they noticed that, here's the key point, that the second dose essentially offered no additional benefit. Meanwhile, people with no history of infection had lower antibody levels after 2 doses of vaccine than the previously infected people had after just 1. And those were from the journal Science. That's not a rinky-dink journal. So that means that people who have had the infection are more immune than those people who actually got 2 vaccines. That's pretty heavy, but that's how our immune system works. I've heard scientists say that we need to give people vaccines because they do better than the actual virus. No, that's not true. And I don't know why we need an article actually to show this or a study to show it. This is basic immunology. We have known this for over 100 years. There's another study they're going over after just one shot, the uh, same type of response. And that was a report in the New England Journal of Medicine. Again, not a fly-by-night journal, although in my opinion, I read these journals, and the New England Journal of Medicine, which has always been our bastion of information and quotables, right? And JAMA, Journal of American Medical Association, our bastion of real science. Well, unfortunately, they've kind of become the New York Times of the medical world. Very, very slanted, very biased, agenda-filled studies. You really have to wade through them. So if you see a kind of a blurb in the media, a soundbite coming from these journals, take it with a grain of salt. You really have to rely on doctors who don't have a bias, who are reading them critically to sift out what is really true. Kind of like you have in certain parts, media are biased, whether they're liberal or conservative. They have their own bias, and you got to sift through that as well. So, but anyway, in this case, I think they're on target, right? Because it's not all false. I mean, again, these journals, these studies, whether it's the New York Times, Washington Post, Fox News, CNN, there are things that you have to realize it's not all false. Some of what they say are true. You just have to sift out information. Same with the New England Journal of Medicine or JAMA. So here's something very interesting. A preliminary version of those findings prompted Dr. Francis Collins, director of the NIH, and he's been the director of the NIH through multiple presidencies from, I think, early 2000s, to observe that, quote, the results raise the possibility that one dose might be enough for someone who's been infected with SARS-CoV-2 and already generated antibodies against the virus. No stuff, okay? Yeah, exactly. This is what I don't like here. However, he added in a blog post, much more research is needed, and I am definitely not suggesting a change in the current recommendation right now. Now, I looked over that blog, and because I wondered why would he recommend no change, okay? Well, his recommendation is because he doesn't want people who have gotten the virus to be reinfected. So I looked to search what is the reinfection rate for those people who have COVID, and certainly, you hear it in the media. Oh, your risk of getting reinfected. Well, how many viruses do you know where you've gotten it and then 6 months later get it again? Very rare. In fact, for COVID-19 worldwide, the reinfection rate is 0.65%. Okay, that's not 0.65, that's 0.65%. That means that's 0.65 over 100. Okay, that means that in 100 people, less than one is going to get reinfected. Half of one is going to get reinfected. Very rare. So if you take thousands and multiple millions, certainly there are going to be people, but it's rare. So again, this is a one-size-fits-all that they're saying, 2 vaccines for people who have been infected already because we don't want you to get reinfected. Well, the chances of you getting reinfected are so low with no vaccines. So if you give one vaccine, what do you think the risk of reinfection is going to be? It's going to be lower than 0.65%. So why get 2 vaccines when you're already well protected? You have the risk of a side effect from the second vaccine, and also you're wasting vaccines for people that should be getting it, let's say in India, where it's widespread and people are dying in the millions. So this is a real problem when you have the director of the NIH, who's a very smart guy, very solid guy, who's also kind of preaching this. It's not really science. It's kind of emotion at this point. So it's just going over this article again, the same thing, that those who got the first shot compared with never infected peers were more likely to report the less common side effects like headaches, fatigue, fever, chills, muscle aches, and joint pain. Yeah, because they've already been primed. And if you give it to them again, prime them again, their immune response is going to give you these symptoms, because these are symptoms of a robust immune response. That means that you're getting a solid immune response if you get those side effects, actually. So France's health authority has already issued a recommendation that those who have confirmed SARS-CoV-2 infection take just one dose of the vaccine, even if their infection didn't result in symptoms of COVID-19. That's France, okay? That's not Francis Collins, okay? Francis Collins is the director of the NIH. This is the country France has already recommended that. But Collins suggested that the U.S. Food and Drug Administration might follow suit if the evidence continues to build. Why do we need evidence? We know from hundreds of years of immunology. We don't need more studies. Come on. It bothers me. I'm talking science here. Collins is talking emotion. I'm not going to go as far as say politics, but he's talking emotion, okay? Okay, Rutherford said, it's possible such a move might be coming, but the CDC has a lot on its plate. I don't care if they have a lot on its plate. This is important. This will free up a lot of vaccines. This will prevent people from having bad responses. People who have had COVID-19 infection maybe shouldn't even get a vaccine. But if you're going to give a vaccine, only get one vaccine. That's it, one vaccine. None of this gobbledygook that you need two vaccines. It's ridiculous. It's not good science. The CDC is very cautious, and maybe waiting for more research before supporting the change. Don't wait for research. Come on. We know what's happening, okay? What you would be doing is also changing the definition of a fully vaccinated person. Oh, my God. I mean, this is really definition of a fully vaccinated person. This sounds more like public policy and now getting into politics, okay? If you had if you had an infection, I can tell you in 6 months from now, you're going to be told one vaccine is okay. Mark my words. Okay, so here now we have this. The CDC said that you can visit only fully vaccinated people indoors without wearing masks or practicing physical distancing, among other benefits outlined by the CDC. Okay, so you're worried about what you said before and not what you said now? No. Someone who's had COVID-19 infection, okay, got one vaccine, is a fully vaccinated person. That should be the edict. That should be the statement by the CDC. Okay, so here, quote, is that going to be something they can operationally execute to say, okay, this person has an antibody test that shows that they're positive, and that's enough for us to say this person can be fully vaccinated after one dose? No, I'm not talking about antibodies, actually. Antibodies are less important. Those people who've had COVID-19 and they say are now antibody negative, well, guess what? They probably still are immune to COVID-19 because they have the cellular immunity to keep the infection in check. And would they get sick from it? Maybe they'd get sick, maybe, but they are not going to get very sick from it. I guess the idea is, well, if they don't have the antibodies, maybe they're more contagious. Well, again, it's so unlikely that they're going to be reinfected. The rate is so low. Why set this whole policy around it? And it's to me, it really is not good science. It's not solid science. So here's the bottom line here, which is kind of ridiculous here. If they can work out the details, excuse me, a policy change would reduce the risk of vaccine shortages. Yes, I agree. So work it out right now. Say right now, one vaccine and people who've been infected with COVID-19 is good enough. I'll give you that. I mean, I might go as far as saying no vaccines, but okay, if you're going to argue that, give them one vaccine, but not two vaccines. And that's the conclusion here. While that may not be a big threat in the U.S., the vaccine shortages, because we seem to have enough to vaccinate all our citizens, effects may it certainly may affect other countries for waiting for theirs to arrive. And yes, that's what we're seeing in India right now. That's what we're seeing in other countries. So let's be smart about this. We haven't been smart about a lot of things, and a lot of you have your own opinions. Let me just clear up a couple things. If you're outside, if you're taking a picture on social media and you're outside and you're alone, you don't need to be wearing a mask. Okay, really. That's not good science. If you're wearing a mask, be honest with yourself that you're just really saying that this is a political statement. You don't need a mask. People who have had COVID-19 infections do not need 2 vaccines, and that's going to come out. I can tell you. We're going to hear that 6 months from now. Meanwhile, millions of people are going to die in other countries because of vaccine shortages while we're waiting for the research to show what we already know. And a lot of this is mired in politics. It really is. Well, let me know what you think about this. I'd be very interested. Subscribe to my YouTube channel so I can keep producing this. Check out my Patreon page. Also, just let me know. I want to hear from you more than anything, whether you subscribe or not. Give me your opinion, what you think about all this, what's going on. I really would love to hear from you. So until next time, I'm Dr. Charles, a.k.a. CoachMD, urging you to stay strong. And strong in mind means to be critical and evaluating what you hear to make sure that you're getting the right information. So stay strong in mind, in body, and in soul. Until next time, bye for now.
Dr. Charles, CoachMD, thanks for stopping by. Make sure to like and comment below. I'd love to hear from you. If you think you have a friend who might benefit from this video, share it with them. For access to exclusive content, support my Patreon. There you'll get private access to videos, meditations, health tips, even relationship and financial tips. You'll have a say in what I produce and be able to participate in a monthly call with me. Don't forget to follow me on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, and subscribe to my YouTube channel. See you soon.